joining us virtually, welcome. And thanks everyone as well for joining us live. It's greatly appreciated. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming. For those who don't know me by name and face, I'm Phil Bunzik. I'm the new Life Sciences Trade Commissioner here at the Consulate. I joined in September, so I'm coming all from private industry, all on the pharma, biotech, and more on the medtech side. So a number of years with Boston Scientific. So as someone said, I am the new Christine Sarkisian, for those who knew Christine. A little bit of a difference. So anyway, again, I'm not going to spend much time here, but for me, clinical trials and the clinical trial advantage for Canada is an important thing for me. I spent a lot of my career in Canada, and I actually had the pleasure of being intimately involved in a study called Taxus 2. And for those who don't know, Taxus 2 was the first big international drug-eluting stent trial for Boston Scientific. So it was a combination stent, bare metal stent, with a paclitaxel drug on it that provided significant clinical benefit for cardiac patients. So I literally went from Halifax, Nova Scotia to Vancouver and did all of the site qualifications with the folks from Boston Scientific. And I can tell you from personal experience from 1997, I hate to say, the quality of care, the clinical trial experience, and the capabilities of the Canadian team is truly outstanding. So I'm very happy to bring a terrific group down from Canada to talk a little bit more about the advantages that Canada has for your clinical trial activities. So I'm going to pass the mic over immediately to our HOM, right, our head of mission here in Boston, Mr. Roger Kuzner.
Phil, thanks so much. Let me say first, folks, those online and those here in the room today, this is it's been great. It's been great getting back out into public and meeting some folks and that our team here, and you're going to meet the team over the course of the next little bit. It's been great getting out to do some in-person events. We were in New Hampshire night before last. We were in Rhode Island, and I mean, who would have thought that you would have missed a lanyard and bacon wrapped scallops so much. It's great being back, and I'll tell you, Phil, having a reception with wine and some great food prior to a presentation. I think you may have vaulted into first place in the Employee of the Month sort of bracket here. We have representatives from 3 Canadian provinces, Ontario, Quebec, and my home province of Nova Scotia. Maybe a little competition here. How many from Quebec? Okay, yeah, I got a few. Got Ontario and Novelicos, Nova Scotia. Okay, Nova Scotia wins. Nova Scotia wins. Okay, yeah. I'm still, I guess, a politician at heart. It's a great pleasure. I'm going to do some quick introductions. Susan Marlin, President of Clinical Trials Ontario. She's going to speak about her organization and give us sort of an overview of what's going on across the rest of the country. Janet Dancy has joined us online. We hope, yeah. She's going to join us virtually and join the panel session. And she's going to speak about the Canadian Cancer Trials Group. And if we have to remind her that she's on mute, she has to buy a drink for the entire room. So that's an agreement that Phil negotiated. Another point in your favor, Phil. From Quebec, Olivier Jerome. And Olivier, he's the Director of Patient and Public Engagement at Catalyse, Quebec Clinical Trials. And he's going to share some exciting stuff. It's going to be a little bit exciting. Not as exciting. I said, so have you got the audio visual extravaganza? He said they confiscated his fireworks at the border. So, but it's still going to be pretty good, though, eh? Yeah, he's going to do his best here anyway. So, Olivia, we're looking forward to that. And Susie Talbot is here as well. And Susie is the president of DU Research CRO based in Sherbrooke, Quebec. And so we're looking forward to your presentation, Susie, as well. From my home province of Nova Scotia, Dr. Jordan Warford. He's the Senior Director of Research for Nova Scotia Health, where he leads a large clinical trials team of researchers. And congratulations on winning the competition at the start of the Doris Grant, who is a Cape Bretoner. And there we go. The Cape Breton cohort. There. And she's also Senior Director of Innovation at Nova Scotia Health. So anyway, Doris, great to have you here as well. And last but certainly not least, Chris Begley. Chris is over here, and Chris is the smartest, hardest working, best looking. Your penmanship is terrible here, Chris. Best looking Vice Consul and Head of Innovation and Investment at the Consul office. And so we're always great to have Chris here. We want to talk a little bit about the relationship between the Boston Life Sciences ecosystem and the Consul office, and just how incredibly important it is and how real it is. And we don't have to look that far back. When the global pandemic erupted and the entire world was seized with the challenge of what it is we do with this monster that's been unleashed. Right here in Boston, the challenge of trying to find a way to deal with it, and development of the vaccine was front of mind with so many people. Our office here in Boston, I have to say that this is before I arrived, did a great amount of work with Moderna and the folks at Moderna, and to be able to bring that product to market, to bring it to the people of Canada, and to help. It was embraced by the people in Canada. Over 85% of Canadians have been received at least one dose. And I think it's a huge success story. And since then, they've also gone on to set up shop in Canada and continue to work in Canada. So it's one of the great side benefits of the Moderna story. Also, with input and support from the Boston office, Merck entered into an agreement with Thermo Fisher Scientific to manufacture their COVID-19 antiviral medicine at their plant in Whitby, Ontario. And once approved, that will be available globally. This speaks to the role that Canada has in innovation. And I just want to say, I was saying to the group before, we take a lot of pride in the innovative spirit in Canada. And from my home province of Nova Scotia, it's where Alexander Graham Bell did most of his work on the telephone, where Marconi did most of his work on wireless communication. And of course, it's where the beer funnel was invented. Innovation dropped off a little bit after that innovation, but we know that, Banting and Best, the work that they did at the University of Toronto in the development of insulin and the benefit that has brought those who deal with diabetes on a day in, day out basis, we know just how important that is. Canada has become a magnet for development, for innovation in health sciences. When we look at clinical trials, we look at Canada as a whole, it provides so much and so much opportunity. It's amazing now. In Canada, 1/3 of Canadians identify that neither French nor English is their first language. 1/3 of Canadians. I know in our home province of Nova Scotia, and when I was growing up, Nova Scotia was a spot for old Scotsmen. We'd let the odd Irishman in, weren't fussy about it, but we let the Irishman in, the odd Irishman. But, and primarily through our universities that threw open the doors for international students. And we've seen, how our population has evolved. And we have very much benefited from that growth. And when we look at Canada as a whole, we have one of the most diverse populations in the whole of the G7. And of course, this is an incredible asset in the realm of clinical trials. So to sum up, Canada is regarded, with regard to Canada in clinical trials, we have quality, we have diversity, we have speed, and we have incentives, a recipe for success. It's now my opportunity, and she wanted me to go with the here's Johnny thing, but Dr. Abby Barrow, we'll hold back from that. You're well respected in this community and in this sector. And Dr. Abby Barrow is the founding director of the Massachusetts Technology Transfer Center and now the managing partner of Cambridge Innovation Partners. And I'd like to call her to the microphone. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. And it's a tough act to follow. But I would like to add my welcome to this event, both in person. It's great to see people back here and business cards being exchanged and all those things that we missed for 2 years. And everybody who's here virtually, we welcome you as well. This event is really well timed. There's been such a massive investment in life sciences in the last 2 years. I think it's amazing how much money has gone into companies here and around the world to really invest in life sciences products to make sure that we remain healthy. But that means there's going to be huge demand on clinical trials infrastructure. So people to manage the trials, people to participate in the trials. So there's going to be huge need for our companies in New England to find partners all over the world. As the Consul General told us, historically, Canada and New England have had very strong and very close ties. So we hope tonight that you'll learn about some new resources that are available in Canada and can continue to build the networks between Canada and New England. So we're going to start off with Susan Marlin, President of the Clinical Trials Ontario, working collaboratively with industry research institutes, patients, and other health innovation organizations to improve the clinical trials environment. She's also an expert in research ethics, and she's going to cover generally Canada's capabilities as well as Ontario. So, Susan.
So thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here today. I don't know, it's almost shocking seeing people in person. I keep thinking, just like every other presentation over the last 2 years, that my dog is going to start barking if anybody comes to the door. So I'm glad that's not going to happen. Anyway, I'm very happy to be here today, not just to be out and about and see people, but to be talking about clinical trials on behalf of Canada and Ontario. And just full disclosure, I live and work in Ontario, but I am an old Scotswoman. I'm from Nova Scotia. It's the Fraser clan. And so I'm with Nova Scotia too today. Yay. So let's get started. So doing trials in Canada, these are things many of you might know, but we love to talk about it. We're ranked third in terms of pharmaceutical investment and competitiveness. That's third in the world, first amongst G7 nations. And we're ranked fourth globally for the total number of clinical trial sites. So we have a lot of trial activity in Canada. When you look at I'm gonna make sure I get this. There we go. When you look at the per capita active trial volume, so this is how many trials exist in Canada per population, per individual living in Canada, we're actually first amongst the G7 countries. And we're third worldwide with only, I think it's Israel and maybe Switzerland above us. So that's quite phenomenal when you think of it. I know we're a large country and we think we're spaced out a bit, but we're very active in terms of clinical trials. So one of the things that's very important to us in Canada, and hopefully to you as well, is that we have a lot of investment from pharmaceutical companies in Canada. So all of the major companies, they do business in Canada. The top 10 definitely do business in Canada. And and we're just talking about the innovative pharmaceutical companies. So we're not talking about some of the smaller biotechs. Oh, put it up more. We're not talking about medical devices. Just the pharmaceutical companies invest an estimated $2 billion per year in research and development. And we talk about the market in Canada. I know we're, again, in the big picture, maybe considered a smaller country in terms of population, but we rank 9th globally for total market size. So when you think of Canada, we have, I think it's a little less than 0.5% of the global population, but every one of these metrics that we talk about here shows how far we hit above our weight. So this slide here is really busy, and I don't expect you to take much away from it, but it just shows what our clinical trial strengths are in Canada in terms of areas. So you can see some of these larger bubbles. You can see breast cancer and lung cancer, cardiovascular disease. You also see chronic diseases, diabetes, and rheumatoid arthritis. So we have lots of areas where we lead in terms of clinical research. So why would you conduct trials in Canada? So we actually, a couple of years ago, we reached out to pharma and we said, what's good about doing trials in Canada? And this is what they fed back to us at the time. So some things which would be obvious, you know, you can speak English in most places in Canada, the healthcare system that underpins our clinical trials. We do have a diverse population, and Roger's already talked about that. Our key opinion leaders, so our scientists in Canada are definitely world-class. Of course, one of our advantages that we talk about is how close we are to the US, and we have a very fast, predictable regulatory environment. And I will talk a little bit more about all of those things. So in terms of our landscape, Canada is really ethnically diverse. We have almost 30% of people that are visible minorities in Toronto, which is where our office is based. 44% of all people who live in Toronto now were born in another country. So we have an incredibly diverse population all across the country, which makes it a great place to do trials. We also think our population is quite open to doing clinical trials. So we did a survey in partnership with colleagues in BC a few years ago, and we asked, this was a public survey, Ipsos Reid public survey. What do you think about clinical trials? Near 60% of people were somewhat or very positive about trials. And near 70% said they would be willing to go on a clinical trial if they were offered. So we have a very open population when it comes to trials. Of course, we have a universal healthcare system. So this means continuity of care in many cases is quite well supported in Canada, and this leads to high quality and predictable data when you're doing trials. So regulatory approval. Health Canada is our regulatory agency in Canada, and they meet this standard all the time. When you submit an application for a clinical trial, for approval to do a trial, you get your approval within 30 days. And they have consistently met this standard for years and years and years. So I wanted to talk just a bit about that regulatory framework in case you're thinking about bringing trials from the US to Canada. US and Canadian regulations, they're really very similar to one another. We all follow GCP. Many trials in Canada follow US regs as well. Our ethics review requirements are very similar. You do have to get approval to import drugs, but things can be done quite simply. I'm not going to look at these next 3 slides in any detail, but just this is a good resource for you. If you're looking at doing trials in Canada, this website actually shows you what the regulatory requirements are, and you can compare countries. So when you look here, that slide, it's comparing the US and Canada and the difference in terms of regulations. So if you're thinking about doing your trials here, it's a great resource for you. So let's talk about money, cost advantage. And I know there's a speaker after me that's much more, knows a lot more about this. So I'll just mention there are certainly trial tax advantages to doing your trials in Canada. We have the second lowest cost for doing trials of G7 countries. So I always like to remind people when we're talking at this point in time that the Canadian dollar is about, I think it's running at 80 cents now per US dollar. So if you are doing your trials in Canada, you get a 20% saving right off the top. And that's terrific. The other thing I'd like to emphasize when I'm talking about Canada, I know I love this slide. It shows how many Canadas you could fit into the States if we ever decided to do that. So you can see quite a few, but you can see almost 80% of Canadians live within 100 miles of the US border. I don't think we have to guess why, but that's the case. So you have a large concentration of places to do trials, not much north of the border. And when you're looking here at Boston and you're thinking about where you want your clinical trial sites, it's shorter for you to drive or to fly to Montreal or to Nova Scotia or to Toronto, Ontario, than it is for you to fly to San Diego or Florida. So it's a much shorter trip for you should you decide to do your trials there. So in terms of the clinical trials environment, there are several organizations across the country, and you're going to hear from several of them today that can help you do your trials. These next 4 slides that I'm presenting, I'm actually presenting on behalf of Dr. Janet Dancy. She's the director of the Canadian Cancer Trials Group. She's in Kingston today, and she'll be joining us for the discussion later. So Janet, my apologies for any mistakes I make here. The Canadian Cancer Trials Group, its mission is to improve treatment and prevention of cancer. So they do all phases of trials and all types of cancers. So they've been working all across Canada and internationally for about 40 years now. They're a very well-established group. They have expertise in terms of both the science and the conduct of clinical trials. They have globally renowned trial platform, and they partner all of the time. So they do have funding from the Canadian Cancer Society, but they partner with the industry all the time to do trials. So imagine when you come into Canada, if you're doing an oncology trial, they can help you develop your protocol, they can provide the data platform for you, and they can provide that connection to cancer experts across the country to get that study done. So in terms of the partners or how they work, they have 85 Canadian institutions that are part of them and have agreements with them to do their trials. In any year, they enroll anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 patients. They have over 100 trials going concurrently, and they also have biobanking facilities. So I just put this slide up here. It outlines their scientific priorities over the next years: understanding cancer biology to improve therapies, of course, reducing the burden of cancer and its treatment, and improving cancer by demonstrating value, which they've done for the last 40 years. So we look forward to Janet joining us later on. So now I'm going to move on to Ontario, which is where I work, but not where I'm from, to talk about what we're up to there. So Ontario is, it's the largest province in Canada. So we have about 14.5 million people there. We say here we have 440 million in biopharma investment, but biopharma will tell you that's an undercount and it's closer to $1 billion, and we do believe that. So we have lots of biotech and medical device companies working there, and at any time we have over 2,500 trials that are active and up and going. So my organization, the one that I work with, is Clinical Trials Ontario. We've been in existence now for about 10 years. It'll be our 10-year anniversary this year. And what we do is we work across the clinical trials community, so with the research community, patients in the public and industry, to try and make Ontario a better location to do clinical trials. So we basically work on streamlining, making trials more efficient, engaging patients in the public to make trials better, and improving access to trials. And of course, we promote Ontario as a good location to do trials, which is part of what I'm doing today. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is our research ethics review system. It's called CTO Stream, and what it allows is for one research ethics review for multi-site trials in Ontario. So we've been running this system now for about 8 years. We have 110 hospitals across the province that are linked into this system. And when you're working with any of those hospitals, you can achieve that single review. The other program that we have in Ontario that's all about streaming, it's called our Quick Start program. And what that looks at is reducing the time from the protocol lands on the desk of the local investigator until the time you're ready to put your first patient on that study. And our goal for that program is a 90-day startup time. So we've been working on developing this. Have to admit, COVID's put a bit of a wrench in things, but we're getting back to it now and hope to have lots more activity over the next years. This is a program that we started working on because of COVID. So COVID brought many challenging things, but it also gave us the opportunity to think about how we could and should be doing trials differently. So many trial activities move from being very site-centric to decentralized. Everything from consenting patients to sending drugs to their house. We've even had people sending in blood samples on cards to come back. So this has been really exciting for us. You know, when we look at our institutional lawyers and privacy and ethics people and other folks, sometimes it's very hard to create change and get them to accept things being done differently. COVID's been a wonderful driver of that. So that's what we're hoping to build on over the next years, making trials even more decentralized in Canada and Ontario. The other thing that we offer with Clinical Trials Ontario is our industry concierge service. So if you're thinking about doing trials in Ontario and you're looking for sites, you can connect with us. We have 230 plus sites that are part of our network, and we can work with you in a very customized way to help you find the sites that you would like and the expertise that you need for your trial. And this is final notes, last slides. If you are thinking about getting your trial started in Canada, of course, Health Canada approval is required, but it will be quick. And if you do need advice, we do have those services that we offer. I mentioned before, ethics review requirements are very similar, and we can help with that as well. And if your company does need resources, you know, in terms of finding partners or finding more about the environment in Canada, you can definitely contact us. And I know you can contact my colleagues from the other provinces as well. So with that, I'll stop and thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to have a panel session at the end. So if you have any questions, all of the speakers will be here. And so please hold your questions. So next, not surprisingly, we're going to Nova Scotia. I think they got the head of the line here. So Dr. Jordan Walford, who's Senior Director of Research for Nova Scotia Health, is going to present. He leads a team of research professionals who support over 1,500 clinical trials and an enrollment of over 17,000 patients. And then Doris Grant is also joining him. She runs the innovation at Nova Scotia Health, and she really helps working to test, try, evaluate, and scale new solutions for the benefit of patients, physicians, and the health system. So thanks.
I'm not sure this is set up for two people, so we'll figure out how this goes. Like everyone else here, we are absolutely delighted to be here and representing Nova Scotia. So first of all, I'd like to begin by thanking Canadian Consulate Roger Cusner and fellow Nova Scotian for inviting us to be part of this very exciting event. We're very grateful. As the Senior Director of Innovation at Nova Scotia Health, it's truly a pleasure to be representing Nova Scotia, even with all my colleagues here. And we do extend the warmest greetings from Honorable Tim Houston, with the Premier of Nova Scotia, and Ms. Karen Oldfield, who is our interim president and CEO of Nova Scotia Health. So both Premier Houston and Ms. Oldfield believe that we can change and transform the healthcare system in Nova Scotia. And we know that clinical trials and advancing our collective clinical trial mandate is an important step in that transformation. Next slide. I have a slide sorter. So why Nova Scotia? I think there are many reasons to pick Nova Scotia as a partner in clinical trials. So Nova Scotia has one unified health system for the adult population with over 45 sites across the province. We are entrusted to provide care to 1 million patients and also support specialized care for our provincial neighbors. We are large enough to be able to have the resources and infrastructure in place, yet small enough that patient voices make it to our boardroom. We're also nimble and adaptable to move at the speed of business. We are Canada's university capital, being home to 10 universities and 13 community college campuses means that we have access to a wonderful, vibrant, robust innovation ecosystem. And we truly believe that Nova Scotia Health's Innovation Hub is at that center of that ecosystem. And finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our long-standing relationship with Boston. Not only are we geographically close, we know we can count on each other in times of need. For example, Nova Scotia has provided a Christmas tree to Boston every year as a way of expressing our gratitude in support following the Halifax explosion in 1917. So I hope you all enjoy that Christmas tree every year. We are always very proud to see it go and be on the road to Boston. One of the other reasons to work together really is, again, to advance our mandate to pursue more clinical trials. So Nova Scotia has some of the poorest health outcomes in Canada, and we really want to change that narrative. Our patients experience some of the highest rates of cancer, neurological, autoimmune, and rare diseases in Canada. We know that partnerships with industry will help turn that tide on the health for Nova Scotians. And so now I get to ask my colleague, Dr. Jordan Warford, to provide an overview of Nova Scotia Health's brand new and recently established clinical trials unit. So Jordan.
Wonderful. Thanks, Doris. I'll give you the clicker. There we go. So 2 years ago, Nova Scotia Health reached a turning point with the establishment of our Health Innovation Hub. Through this hub, we have the ambitious goal to transform our health system for the betterment of Nova Scotians through leveraging the power of clinical trials. We've been in this space for over 30 years, but we also know we can do better and become stronger partners with all of you. And that's exactly what we've been doing. We're actioning our strategy through 3 goals that guide our daily work. First, we're improving access to cutting-edge therapeutics and devices. Secondly, we're aligning collaborative opportunities to have regional impact. And third, we're growing the research investment to scale sustainably. So let's start with improving access. At any one time, there are over 500 active clinical trials that enroll 17,500 patients. This spans over 30 therapeutic areas. This work is fueled by an army of over 500 dedicated research staff who have the goal of producing the next, the best available evidence to inform the next big idea. We are also the recipient of $27 million in research award funding and are home to an additional 1,000 non-interventional research studies. We've been working with our patients, our clinical champions, and our industry partners to ultimately change and understand their pain points. Collaborating with our Regional Innovative Medicines Canada team, as well as many of the companies who are in this room today, we are really changing the dial on how we do clinical trials in the province, and this has provided deep insight into areas of new opportunities. Our approach helps you seamlessly identify unique patient populations, yield high-quality data, and ultimately improve study recruitment and retention. We know these are some of the biggest challenges you face every single day. So the big question is, how do we do it? Welcome to our digital front door. Most of our clinical trials happen in our capital city of Halifax. We want all Nova Scotians to be able to access these life-saving therapies for their own communities. We are determined to become a leader in decentralized clinical trials by implementing new patient engagement platforms that bring new partners to the table. And I hope some of you will join us in that endeavor. Match that with the streamlined operations that result in 90-day study startups, and you have a winning combination. We've made significant advancements in things like virtual monitoring, a mobile clinical trials unit, and e-consent, just to name a few. Here you have a synergistic healthcare system that wraps around clinical trials. And we believe research is care. And that culture shift has truly started to change across the province. Our approach in this digital front door has paved the way towards connecting you with a geographic catchment of 2.1 million people across Atlantic Canada. Together with New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland, we've established the Atlantic Clinical Trials Network. And this is brand new, and you are amongst the first audience to hear more about it today. Together, we'll do many things to the benefit of our communities, not the least of which is a harmonized operations platform and contract models that make your job more efficient. We don't ever want to see a clinical trial not start up in the Atlantic region because of capacity. So this allows you to seamlessly, whether it is in St. John, New Brunswick, St. John's, Newfoundland, or Halifax, Nova Scotia, be able to take the startup effort and the initial site visit work that you've done and put it towards another trial should something not quite work out the way you envisioned. So finally, I'll pass along the mic to Doris, who's going to talk a little bit more about our partnership approach.
Thanks, Jordan. Didn't realize it wasn't going to be set up for two people. So apologize for the back and forth. So one of the most strategic investments that we have made in our portfolio is really building out our business development team. And this team really does serve as the face behind that digital front door to all things Nova Scotia Health. And so, you know, these are the people that work really quickly to help identify sort of the resources and capacity that we need to be able to partner on these trials. But at the same time, we also want to have discussions with you as industry partners to be able to understand what's coming, what can we do better, how can we improve? And at the same time, we work behind the scenes. We work with all of our clinical champions. We work with all of our research partners to be able to understand current states and where they want to go, so that at the end of the day, we can really be great partners in helping to set up really productive relationships with our partners. So also as a BD team, we can step in and out of relationships as we need. We know that studies, once they start, most of them go really, really well, but sometimes you have a hiccup. And normally the first call that our clinical champions make and that our industry partners make is to our business development team. And we take that role very seriously, right? We're a team that loves to solve problems, to really solution these things so we can get on with the business of clinical trials. So there has been a very significant investment in that team within Nova Scotia Health. And we're very proud of the approach that we've taken. We're very proud of the success that we've had to date. And, you know, we're very proud to just say our front door is open. And that's the front door to Nova Scotia, but also to Atlantic Canada. So with that, I will say thank you once again.
Great. Need a bit more room here. So thanks, Jordan and Doris, and thanks also for the Christmas trees. We really do appreciate them here. So we're going to move to Quebec now, and Olivier Jerome, who is the Director of Public and Patient Engagement at Catalyst Quebec, is going to present their province-wide collaboration with a network of 23 health institutions.
Right. So many faces. Wow, it's been a while in person, in English as well. So Apparently, it's like riding a bike. So we'll see right away. So I'm Oliver Jerome, Director of Patient Engagement and Public as well. So at Catalyst, we are reinventing clinical research in Quebec. We strive for innovation. We aim for operational excellence. But we're not doing that alone. We're not doing this on our own. We work as a collective 360 network of collaborators to rally around all the stakeholders that want the same thing, basically to optimize the clinical trial landscape in Quebec. So Catalyst Quebec is a not-for-profit organization that has been created by the Ministry of Economics and Innovation in 2017 as part of the Stratégie québécoise des sciences de la vie, Quebec life science strategy, if I may say, which aimed to position the industry in a more resilient, flexible, agile position to better adapt and react to the changing environment of life science, but really with the innovation-first approach in running clinical trials and other components of this system. So at Catalyst, we got our share of that wider mandate, focusing on clinical trials. So our mission is consists to optimize clinical trials in order to accelerate the development of innovation in healthcare for all patients. It seems pretty economic as a mission, but in our DNA, in our values, we are human-driven. The patient is at the center of our mission. Our vision is to make sure that we create an environment that allows all patients, regardless of their medical condition, to have access to clinical trials wherever they are in the province. And to address that challenge, well, we have three main strategic objectives. The first one, top priority during our consultation, during the establishment of our first strategic plan, this has been identified as the main priority by stakeholders, industry, searchers, which is to activate clinical trial quickly and optimize the process overall to activate and make them available. And that's really our first focus. The way we've done it is basically rallying, as I said, numerous stakeholders and developing common tools in order to promote best practices and make it work for all parties that have different priorities. You'll see later, I'm going to present more details about it, but services like our fast track service came out of that strategic priority. The creation of common tools in hospitals and other university centers, research centers also came out of that top priority. The second one is more patient-driven, which is to facilitate patient recruitment and referrals. That's the patient-driven one where we seek to better engage with patient and public. As described by some of the presenters that were before, yes, we have to increase literacy, even though the metrics shown by Susan earlier showed that the perception of clinical trials in Canada is good. It's actually pretty well, it's positive, but it's nearly as high as we would love to see it. We are working hard to break the silos between clinic and research to make sure that we're positioning clinical research earlier on in the patient journey. And the last one, well, that's why we're here, right? Increase Quebec's international visibility to attract more trials. We strongly believe that by succeeding to the first two strategic objectives, well, we're gonna have more fun with the third one, right? So on that slide, yeah, I have to lean forward. So if we look at the bottom one, you can see our founding father, the Ministry of Economics and Innovation, and next to it, you can see the Ministry of Health. They're not far off one another because, again, this is the liaison between the economic component of our mission and the end user, the healthcare system. But our model, as you can see, Catalyst acts as a central, neutral entity that coordinates all the efforts. But these two ministries are sitting on our board. They're collaborating. They're proactively working with us and the other stakeholders involved to craft tactics, to be proactive, to know what are the needs and prioritize and make sure that there's an alignment with their greater objective to improve the healthcare system. On top, you see 23 logos. These are the 23 hospital centers that are part of our network. This is 23 out of 34, but through these 23 centers, these are all the centers that are running pharma-sponsored trials at the moment. So basically, it's 100% of the Quebec population that is serviced through these centers. And all of these centers, their executive, are part of our board, our workshops. They're working hand in hand with all the other stakeholders to optimize the landscape. You see on the left-hand side, the industry is there as members. By being members, not only they can use or be early adapters or pioneers of the strategic project that we're developing or the public services we're developing, they're at the table with the healthcare system. They're at the table with the ministries. They're there to make sure that their voices are heard, their priorities are addressed, and that each of them have perhaps specificities that wants to be addressed or included in the way we craft our program. That's the forum to do so. And it's been working very well. On the right-hand side, well, to finish, you see patient groups. This is very important for us. Patient groups are it's the patient voice to our program, right? Patient engagement is the key. We want patient to be, not only to be at the menu, but sitting around the table. I don't know if it translates well, but there's a French say for that. And really, there's a diversity that we wanted to address all therapeutic fields mainly, and not only focus on oncology or rare diseases or neuro. We wanted all these therapeutic fields to be represented somehow in our programs, as well as geographical disparities. We have that as a challenge in Quebec. That's why that we don't necessarily see it on that slide, but we also have a patient partner panel that addresses that geographical disparity to make sure that the context of each areas in the country are addressed when we're developing our programs. How we operate it, because bringing out all together these folks is a kind of work of art, right? So our strategic alignment and the way we implement it is through these working committees. All of these committees have very specific focus based on their core competency and the way that they can bring added value to that whole optimization operation. So the patient advisory committee, as described, it's mainly our patient partners and patient groups that are bringing in their insights. The scientific advisory committee is composed of 15 to 20 clinicians, physicians, searchers, publicized authors, very respected clinicians that are well known by their peers, that they bring their insight as practitioners to make sure that our programs are aligned on the reality on field and on where innovation is standing. They're key opinion leaders and they help us to craft the better programs. The Operation Advisory Committee, this is kind of where the magic happens, where you have the ministries of health, ministries of economics, health centers leadership, pharma leadership, all sitting together to look at the operational side. There's so much work that needs to be done at that level that it is then fragmented in 3 other working committees. The ethics one with REB's chairs from all the sites come together and craft common evaluation tools. At the legal level, it's all the contract managers and lawyers involved in the landscape that work in a collaborative fashion to come up with better streamlined way to address the legal components. And it's a new one, and it used to be represented by a sole person only. Now it has its own committee, the Pharmacy Advisory Committee. It's an important aspect of running clinical trials, and it varies from one site to another. We need it as well to streamline that area. So it's about identifying issues and develop together with consensus, working solutions for the greater good of optimizing the whole landscape, and it worked. Here's some of our current flagship projects. So the fast track evaluation service, we're really proud of this one because it really translates what the business model was at first, a collaborative network of diverse stakeholders. The name is self-explanatory. It aims through that 360 synergetic approach to activate pharma-sponsored trials within 8 weeks. That's the target. The average used to be around 29 weeks. It has been shown by our consultation that was the first KPI, let's say, to address, to make things happening, shortens the whole process, reduce time to market for sponsors. And that's the way that the program was delivered. We gave it a shot, and we had our first pilot project back in December that showed the success. It was a Novartis study, international one, happening in more than 1,000 sites in 100 countries. Well, among the top 5 worldwide, 3 sites, the top 3 were Quebec sites that managed to activate within 7 weeks. That's 8 weeks for this one, sorry. And the 5th one was also from Quebec within 10 weeks. And moreover, the first worldwide patient was recruited in Quebec. So it was very, very eye-opening in what we managed to develop as a group together. And this evening, while you're here, I may scoop it out with some reserve. I won't name anyone, but we're about to publish a press release announcing that for the last 2 months, we had 2 new projects that were activated within 7 weeks. So pushing down the barriers once again. And it shows that that model not only is replicable, but it's transferable to other therapeutic fields. The first Novartis study was in cardiology. The other 2 are in MS and solid tumors. Sponsors were different as well. So it is a great business model that is currently piloted with the members of our network. We aim for a full global launch at the end of Q3, but it really had some great potential, and we have something very special there. We currently have other 15 projects in the pipeline, all aiming for 7 to 8 weeks in terms of activation. Phase 1 to phase 3 mainly, so it's a great program. In terms of patient engagement tactics, we have services that accelerates and improve patient recruitment and referrals. The first one is, well, you may heard, there's some language challenges in Quebec when it comes to communicating and servicing the patient community. We are developing an innovative, fully bilingual clinical trial search tool. We need better patient recruitment. The Quebec population requires a tool that addresses the French language issue. And this is interfaced with the hospital data itself, so it's real time and updated. It shows great potential again, but you may have the fanciest clinical trial search tool. At the end of the day, the nature of the disease, the level of complexity that finding a trial is will require sometimes extra help. So we're setting up a public service that is a clinical trial navigator in both language for patient caregivers, but also for clinicians. It's a time-consuming task. We want clinicians to spend time with their patients, and we can be a resource for them. The last 2 are more associated with upcoming tactics. I won't spend too much time, but there's one about valuation, centralization of data. There's a big bill of law happening in Quebec, the PL19. We have our share of the deal when it comes to clinical trial data here. And the last one is we're creating a web-based clinical research hub for all of our different groups, where they have a one-stop shop when it comes to find all the info, the concierge services to optimize their practice or their will to invest in Quebec. And well, that's about it. You follow us on our social. You can subscribe to our newsletter, as we're gonna come up with some great progress reports on our pilot project and launch date when they become available to non-members. But if you have any question or wants to learn some more, feel free to write us.
Bonsoir. Thank you. So very happy to be here. My name is Susie Talbot. I'm the president of DX Research, as it was mentioned, but I'm also board administrator for BioQuebec. So I need to. Okay, so BioQuebec is it's an association, and we have over 100 members. It's based in Quebec, BioQuebec, it says this, but the life science industry in a whole. So we've learned much more about the institution and the clinical trial association, but now it's about life science. So the biotech, the pharma, and also the CROs, and that's the part where I'm going to be more focusing today. So these are some of the biotechs that we have in the province of Quebec. Probably you know some of them. Medicago has been really in the news recently. And also some pharmas. We are very happy to welcome any of you if you still want to be with us. Also the contract research organization, so the CROs. We have a lot of variety in the CROs, and we have you seen on Olivier's slides, BioQuebec is part of the Catalyst group. So it's very collaborative way that we work together. CROs is supporting a lot of the pharma and the biotech industry by in many ways. I drove here today. I was happy. 4 hours. Yeah. No plane, no, no security, no delay in my plane and my flight. I just drove. The road was nice. It's 4 hours from Sherbrooke. So you got to think of that, right? MassBio, BioQuebec. We have a 3-year renewal agreement with MassBio. So some of you came to our events in Quebec through that corridor, and we came here as well several times. So we have a special collaboration here, and we'll be back at the beginning of May for that MassBio annual event. And we have a 3 days here presence. So don't hesitate to meet with us, ask us any questions that you may have about life science. We are, more than happy to be in that agreement. So going to the ecosystem, the CRO. So this is nothing new to you, I'm sure. You need, and we've seen it with Susan's presentation about all the regulatory that you need to do. You may not know what to do. You have a bottle with your great science in there. You want that to be on the market pretty soon, like ideally yesterday, probably. How do you do that in Canada? You have now great resources to go to, but we also have some great CROs to support any of that work. We have like the biomanufacturing, we have the formulation CROs, we have the one that's do your monitoring, especially with the French-speaking population. You need to get the right monitor to monitor your trial. We have great capacity, and we work together. So it can be a turnkey for, something easy that you call us and we can organize everything for you. Go to that sponsor, to that CRO for this, go to that one for that. Or you can also go on what you need for your trial. So from discovery to phase 4, we cover everything. It says 71 CROs in the province of Quebec, or a little bit more than that. Since COVID, it's kind of exploded a little bit. So we can really be a partner with you. Some of the biotech do not have all the resources in-house. They don't know much about trials, or they don't know much about patients. And Olivier just spoke about patients. It is so important that you fit your trial as well for if you're thinking of coming to Quebec, to the real life of patients, and how to make sure that you will go over any challenges that we can tell you right up front we expect. We also have at BioQuebec on the website, we have a map. It's interactive map. So you can filter. You're looking for a CRO, you can filter CRO, and you have all the names, coordinates, and you have it on an interactive map. You have also the biotech and the pharma if you want to look at it as well. you don't know, you don't remember, call BioQuebec and we'll guide you. We have some great staff there waiting for your calls. Now, I picked an example, my business as a CRO, to give you just a little explanation about, you know, a little example, I would say. At DX, we conduct clinical research trials from all around the world. We founded DX in order to create an effective business model that could grow with the needs of the market. Our ultimate objective is to bring medicine and treatments to patients that really need them. Conducting clinical trials is a very complex thing, but we make it easy. We ensure we respect the highest standards, because tomorrow, that medicine, that treatment might be for your kids, your parents, or yourself. We're even more passionate when we see the results of what we do each day. So now that you know why we're doing it, and I'm sure it's probably a lot the same that why you're doing it. Just to explain a little bit the business model, DX Research is the platform. Actually, everything that you need to run a trial is at DX. The reg specialist, the ethics specialist, the data entry person, the marketing team, the recruitment, the investigators, everyone is on that platform. And then around us, there's the sponsors and CROs, and I saw some of you working with us already, and we're very happy to do so. But in the industry of the CROs, we also partner with other CROs, like I said. So I'm talking about the Quebec province, the CROs that are located in the province of Quebec, but we have some great other CROs, you know, through Canada. So we have CROs that can manage your data, your stats, everything. We also work with physicians. So we have over 35 physicians, different specialties that can really give you the feedback of what's going on in their daily clinic. So you have great feedback on, you know, is it feasible? Is it possible? Does it make sense? And of course, patients. That's why we do research, right? Every day. So just an example. We received a call, at the beginning of last year. A trial was refused by a authority in another country, not the US, another one. And because the trial was only virtual, so the health authorities were not allowing anything virtual for patients. It's a migrant prevention trial. So they came to Canada, they called us and they say, how can we make it work, right? So we organize everything and we're running that trial. So this is one of example, and we have plenty of examples like that. So we really can offer other things that others can't because we are a community, we collaborate, and we're really open-minded. So this is the CRO industry as a whole. I'll be here all evening, all the rest of the evening. You can, contact me. You can contact BioQuebec. You can go on the website. And make sure that you keep in touch, and we'll be back in May, at the beginning of May. So make sure you're present, and we'll be happy to give you more information. Thank you.
Just the mic. Okay, and don't go away. So thanks, Susie, and we look forward to having BioQuebec and your group of CROs come down in early May. So I'd like to invite the speakers to come up, and I believe that we might have Janet joining us virtually. So, yep. So if you want.
I'm just going to move the order things here.
Okay, we can do that. Happy to.
All right, I'll start it off. I'm the rover
Okay.
in this program. So for anyone in the audience here that has questions, just kind of raise your hand. I'll come over and you get the mic. Jimmy.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to really thank you, all of you, for this wonderful presentation. It's very informative. I am a medical director at JSK in an oncology clinical development program. Actually, we have a trial in Quebec going really well, and other provinces in Canada to work Quebec specifically because it's going to be our first site initiated, and testament to what you mentioned. I have quite recently, not only the FDA but other regulatory agencies are talking about the representation in clinical trial, and also clinical trial diversity. There is a recent Chinese submission that was questioned because there was no US population for a marketing authorization. Is there not only for no specific patient in the US, but also the diversity of that population that was done in China as an example? What is the current thinking for Health Canada in terms of not only representation, but as a threshold, also the diversity?
Literally a runner. All right, who wants to go first? All right, I'll start.
I think that reluctance was none of us knows the answer to that question, do we? You know, Jimmy, I'd have to say the US has been ahead of Canada for decades when it comes to looking at representation in clinical trials. So racial information has been collected for years, part of the norm. Canada was very slow to even getting around to starting to collect that information. Sometimes it felt like Canadians thought it was impolite to ask, whereas it's a really important, you know, factor in terms of reactions to therapies. So I don't know that there's really anything happening, and I'm looking at my colleagues to see if they've heard of anything.
I can speak to one thing. Yeah. So I had the privilege of speaking on a panel with Health Canada with respect to engaging Indigenous communities. And I think what the acknowledgement, to your point, Susan, is that we're not where we need to be, but that engagement with community is the first piece, because how we do clinical trials needs to change when we think about you know, marginalized communities that are frankly you know, distrust the process. And so the innovation in clinical trial methodology is where we need to head and really catch up. So from even the Nova Scotia perspective, we have the Network Environments for Indigenous Health Research Network, the Wabanaki Labrador Network. And we're learning, and we're very early into this, so this is not a mature process, but we are, you know, seeking community to take the leadership. We follow, and we learn, and we act and respond based on the direction of our communities. And I think we need to take that for various populations that have historically been harmed or have had significant challenges accessing clinical trials from an equity perspective, and do that approach. And then, you know, much as we have done with decentralized clinical trials and virtual, we can adapt you know, from the rigidity and some of the dogma of how we look at the scientific process, which is of course very important, I'm not dismissing that, but take it forward to look at two-eyed seeing approaches, for example, and less westernized approaches to how we would engage communities in a way that builds trust.
Just to add one thing, I mean, the diversity is there, and even when you get down to subpopulations, so you have extremely large Tamil, Sikh, Hindu, Muslim, Indian populations at different places. In Montreal, you have West African, Haitian, you'll get Trinidadian and Ghanaian in Toronto. So we've got the diversity, and like they say, the challenge is bringing them through the healthcare system. But as Canadians, sometimes we beat ourselves up a bit. And one of the advantages is with our healthcare system model, while certain populations are underrepresented, it's not to the same degree as in the United States. So our single payer model will bring more people through the healthcare system and give them the opportunity. So challenge is then building on that to try and pull more in. And that's, like you say, at a community level, getting more native language speakers out there, native language speaking doctors.
I may add something about the diversity in subpopulations. When you're considering subpopulations, there's that rare disease aspect where, because of the founder effect in some areas of our country, we have a high concentration of population profile that you don't necessarily see so much in other countries. So it is very interesting for certain rare diseases, or even common rare diseases, if I may say, because of that founder's effect we can find in Quebec or in other parts of the country.
And I've got an extra mic now, so yep.
Something like this. Okay, hi, I'm Colin Burnett with Cover Medical, and we currently have 6 ongoing clinical trials here in the Boston area, testing a little implantable micro device that is the safety of that device that can be utilized for prediction of therapy response in oncology patients. And one of the things we're finding is that across these different indications that it's being tested in is that patient recruitment is very slow because it's a very competitive environment here to get patients. So what I'm wondering, I did notice in the Jerome, your presentation that you have a patient registry, which it would seem to me that one of the big advantages of Canada and more of a centralized healthcare system is that you have patient registries that we can go to find patients that would be interested perhaps in being involved in a clinical trial. So could you speak to that about the recruitment rate? And because, for us, we'd like to get through our clinical trial faster than it is right now. We're recruiting about maybe a patient, well, roughly 1.5 patients a month on average, right? So it's kind of slow. And so I'd like to be able to speed that up. And we don't need many patients, that's the thing. But nonetheless, I'd like you to comment on that.
Well, I already have the mic, so that's great. About patient registries, we don't have yet a national provincial patient registries. That's in the book under the Bill 19, that is valuation of healthcare data. But it's a 3-year scope for that because it's just fragmented at the moment. But the way we bypass that challenge is that we work within the patient communities and liaising with the patient communities themselves, the patient groups. We reach out to them and communicate to them to better recruit at that level. That's how we reach out. And some patient groups are highly sophisticated. They have their own registries. I'm thinking about cystic fibrosis per se. They have a national pan-Canadian registry that is 30 years old. And given the nature of the disease, it's not only a fragment of the population, it is a census of the population. So we, by having them on board with us, we share these highly valuable tools that some disease-specific groups can leverage for the greater good.
I think one of the pieces on the digital front door aspect is the patient registry. So, that is a major priority from a Nova Scotia health perspective. There are over 90,000 streams of patient data in various forms across Nova Scotia, coming from Nova Scotia Health still relatively young. We amalgamated from multiple district health authorities several years back. So that's on radar. And I think you'll note across Canada, that is a priority, and something that I can say Health Canada has also said, we need to use the registries that we have more effectively to be able to streamline that data nationally.
I was going to say one of the things I think one of the challenges we have in Canada, and I think Olivier pointed out something very nice they're doing in Quebec, which is the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Economic Development, other people are kind of working together around the table. And often research fits more in economic development than it does in health. So sometimes I think that, when we're looking at really smart solutions like registries, imagine every patient in Quebec and Ontario and Nova Scotia agrees to be in research, should the opportunity arise, which would facilitate companies and lead investigators connecting with them directly. One of the examples that we had recently in Ontario, which again, to me was groundbreaking. I'd never heard of it. I'm sure it happens other places, but it was groundbreaking there. When people were given their COVID vaccine, they were asked, would you agree to be contacted for research? And if they said yes, this was amazing. Like, we know of one group that was able to recruit 1,500 participants within 2 weeks for a study that they were doing, because they had access to the people that said, yes, I'd be happy to participate in research. So I'm hoping, like with our healthcare systems, these universal healthcare systems, and everybody with unique IDs and presumably contactable, like in a common way, I hope we move a lot further ahead in this regard in the future.
Can I ask one more question? Yeah, do you mind? Just indulge you for a moment. So related to this also is that, so we have our IRBs with Brigham and Women's Hospital and Mass General Hospital. How transportable are they to, say, Quebec or Nova Scotia or Ontario? I mean, do we have to reinvent the wheel with Health Canada, or can we just take that as sort of plug and play? This has already been approved down here. Can we have essentially a fast track approval of some sort in Canada, since it's already set up, and also with the FDA as well?
For regulatory approval?
Yeah.
Yeah, not yet. And again, that's another opportunity that's in front of us between the US and the EU and many other jurisdictions. I think what we look for is essentially the same, but we still have different formats. Our regulatory agency has been talking about that harmonization for years, and they're still talking about it. But I was going to say it's hard. Like, I hear your challenge, and I was going to say we were sitting in Canada over the past 2 years, seeing things approved here that we had to wait weeks and weeks for afterwards, to kind of get here. So we'd love to see that, and any chance any of us to advocate for both harmonization around clinical trials approval and approval of drugs and devices, we should be doing that.
Yeah, for a small company like ours, is a big overhead to have to do it over again for another jurisdiction. So that's.
But if you want to, definitely contact us. We'll give you good advice.
Okay.
I would say definitely. And again, just coming from the industry side, now that I'm in the belly of the beast, so to speak, that's very high on my priority in terms of, again, from a regulatory perspective, to make the regulatory requirements in Canada not equal to, but as safe as and faster from an industry side, because from an industry side, you're not asking where can I go for the toughest, longest regulatory process, right? I want the fastest, appropriate regulatory review so we can get to our clinical trials and our regulatory approvals judiciously. So, and again, we had these I've had this conversation before. Let's keep up the conversation, because it's, we've got the advocates here as well, and it's important to hear it from industry.
Yeah, hi, I'm Nidal Luiki, CEO of Steps. My question is, have you ever worked with a startup? And in that case, what is the program? Do you have?
Do you have special programs for startups? So
Yeah, for startup.
Yeah.
Sure. So we do a lot of work with our startup communities to be able to, again, sort of match make with clinicians and our clinical communities. So one of the programs, and I think Abby had introduced it before, we really have established what we're calling the Innovation Launchpad. And really it is the opportunity to sort of bring in innovative solutions, whether it's a therapeutic, a medical device, or things that can be incorporated eventually into the health system, to be able to test and try in that way. So we really, again, work with our startup community at the very earliest stage to figure out, is there a way that we can help them? Is there a way that we can streamline their work to be able to move them through this clinical trial process? So one of our startups in our area, by working in partnership with us, and it was a respiratory device. But really for them, the partnership with us and the advocacy and the championship within the health authority really advanced their timelines by almost 23 months. Now, for any startup, that is a significant, well, for any company, that's a significant impact. For a startup company, That's huge, and we know that. So again, working with our Nova Scotia companies, but also working with our Atlantic Canadian companies to help them through that. So.
And one other thing, if you decide that you want to do a clinical trial in Nova Scotia and you think you have to be there to supervise it, you know, there's many pathways that are quite easy for you to come in on a work visa, permanent resident pathway, and Chandra sitting next to you nodding her head knows them all inside out. But there's lots of different pathways for startups to come to Canada and work, as well as pathways for established companies to bring people in from anywhere in the world if they are in any of the STEM labor classes. So it's a 2 to 4 week processing time, and a person is in from virtually any country in the world.
Chris, sorry, with that as well, Chris, can you maybe just talk a little bit? We were talking about the incentives, but the SHRED program, a little bit more, what it is, how it works, and how people can access it.
Yeah, so there's the Scientific Research and Economic Development Tax Credit, commonly referred to as SHRED, to save having to say that every time. And this is a tax credit that's got 2 different levels. One's for Canadian corporations, one's for non-Canadian corporations. And for Canadian corporations, including, for example, if you work with a CRO, these corporations receive approximately 45%. It depends on the province, so you can't give an absolute, but approximately 45% of the research costs back in cash at the end of the year. For a non-Canadian corporation, they'll receive 10 to 20% back in cash, again, depending on the province, and another 25% against revenues. But where this is important in a clinical trial context is CROs can work with you because they typically are Canadian owned and receive a benefit. So it impacts their ability to do the work at a good price. And these credits are fairly broadly defined, but you really do want to have a specialist working with you to prepare the tax return, because they're able to ferret out every little tiny hole where you've done research that you might not think you did, and really maximize your credit.
Good. Any other, how about more questions from Carla? Over there.
I guess it was more of a comment than a question. So first of all, thank you. Pardon? A comment. Really great to see you all today. And I think you've done a really great job of highlighting the amazing advantages of doing R&D as well as clinical development in Canada. And as a Canadian living in the Maritime, in Boston, but from the Maritimes and Quebec, so I get double points up there. It's really encouraging to see, and I think if I could leave a thought, is any way to harmonize across the provinces is a win-win for both the provinces and Canada, because there's a tremendous number of competitive advantages to doing clinical trials in Canada, but there's a lot of perceived barriers. And I think if we could figure out a way to harmonize across the provinces, it would be really hard to say no from an industry standpoint to doing clinical research and clinical development in Canada. So that's my parting thought to you all, but a huge thanks for coming down.
And I'll say from a federal point of view, because I represent the federal government, that's a priority of Health Canada's. And they're looking, starting with transparency, shared transparency across the province. The second is ethics evaluations. And now and then they're going to work on more and more steps to transparency. So then I'll pass it over to the provinces to tell, so they can say how poorly Health Canada is doing it.
I certainly, no, that was not competitive against the comment for Health Canada. I will say, you know, the Atlantic Clinical Trials Network is trying to do exactly that. Clinical Trials Ontario is doing phenomenal work on that and working across jurisdictionally. So I think, you know, the future is very bright with how we collaborate nationally. So we are very new in terms of the network perspective for Atlantic Canada, but the first things we're tackling, contracts, research ethics. How do we do that? And, you know, to the point of how much repetition there needs to be, well, I think on an ethical level, you're always going to want to have a first pass to ensure that you are protecting the interests of your community. how you do that, the timeline in which you do that, the processes wrapped around that can all be really user-friendly. So it's that frictionless operating environment that you need to move. And I think, you know, the next year, the next 2 years, we are all hungry to see this happen. And you know, the Canadian spirit, we are friendly. We do like to talk to each other and make sure that certainly we are working to the betterment of patients across the country.
And did Janet come online?
She's not, and I'll
Oh,
I was gonna
sorry.
say,
I was going to say, I'm sure
Phil,
Janet is
Phil
working
asked
on
me to
this.
share with the group that Janet technically had issues and was unable to make it today. But that definitely is a good example of a group that works well across Canada. Just, I would echo everything that's been said here, but I'd also offer, there is a project existing now in Canada looking at streamlining research ethics review across the country. So it's funded by our federal granting agency, the CIHR. But it's focused in child health research with the idea that it's even more important in child health research to solve this problem because you have so few patients on those trials. So getting ethics review all across the country takes so much time and so much money to do that. There's that piece of it, but we're also very hopeful. CTO, our group is partnering with the National Child Health Research Group. We're also really helpful that I know we don't want to take advantage of children, but with children being the focus, that people will help us drop some of those barriers and help get beyond the logistical issues. And by the way, I don't want to minimize those. It's not that people do not want to collaborate, but it does take some work and effort. But I too am very optimistic that over the next years, we'll see lots of progression. Yeah.
I may add that, yes, the future is pretty bright on that end because there's a will to transpose a provincial reality into national efficiencies. And that's the obvious in terms of a market perspective. If I'm speaking for Quebec, we're 8 million in our province. Whereas if we count Canada-wide, we punch way above our weight. It's 35 million patients potentially that are there. So it is known, and it is based. That our government is more and more open to do these. And I'll give you one example. Yes, obviously our language in Quebec, but there are bills that were there to make sure that all provincial jurisdiction processes were available and standardized in French first. Well, as an industry, we said, no, not clinical research. It has to remain in English because these multi-site studies, they happen in other jurisdiction and we need to streamline everything. Can we skip that one? Oh yeah, sure, it makes sense. So they're open to create cross-border efficiencies like that and not work in silos as it perhaps used to be so much. But so the future is pretty bright there. And for some therapeutic fields, market is the Canadian, the whole country is the target because there's so many few patients here and there. The population is fragmented. We're presenting ourselves as a country much more than a province because you're not showing 5,000 multiple myeloma patient, but 15,000 myeloma patient in Canada when you're looking at a research network. So it's already in there as a fundamental of way to thinking. It's just it needs more time and efforts in upcoming modernization of policies to make sure it happens at the ground level as well.
Good. Any more questions maybe for the audience? I don't think we have anything online.
We had a good audience and a panel that didn't need moderating.
It's been terrific. And again, exactly. And again, Janet apologized, but if you do have any questions for the Canadian Cancer Trials Group, feel free to reach out to her or to me or Susan, and we'll be happy to answer it. And I just want to have one parting comment before I pass it over to Abby to close us out. But a really great question. And as Dina asked me, it's kind of lay the foundation for what's coming next. And this panel, this discussion was to talk about doing clinical trials in Canada, which is obviously your best and great option to do and should always be under consideration. And then moving forward, to your earlier question, Canada also has a lot of great technologies, products, technologies, AI algorithms that can help make your clinical trials better. For example, we have a great product, a great company in Quebec that can help determine what Alzheimer's patients are not going to deteriorate, right? So these are patients you probably don't want to have in your clinical trial, because if they're randomized to the placebo group, they'll do really well. So again, and that's just one technology, but again, in terms of asking the question, asking the questions ahead of time, there are technologies and people and products that can help set you up for greater success moving forward, not only for the clinical trial, but also for being able to extract relevant and important clinical data from the trials that you do run. So that's kind of coming up next later on.
Okay, I think I've got a mic. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming. Thank all of our panelists. I think from a US perspective, we're in awe of the amount of collaboration, cooperation, and your ability through your healthcare system to really get to patients and to manage those trials. So we look forward to continuing to work with you. There's going to be a lot of trials coming out of the startups here and bigger companies that have raised significant funds. So I'm sure that we're going to have very strong business relationships with you as well. So thanks very much.
And of course, we have wine, cheese, food, and drinks for the next hour or so, literally until they kick us out.